Okay. So as most of you will know, tomorrow is equinox again. And it's kind of a special day, you know, when everything is in balance, when the day and the night are exactly of the same length. And then we start to go towards having longer nights again. And, you know, the balance is just for a very short moment, and then it starts to go in the opposite direction until we come to the next equinox, you know, when we are again in balance in the spring. And then this is the way how it goes. It's like breathing in and breathing out. And it's impermanence in action, really, how it presents itself on such a vast scale in terms of the seasons on this planet, and in a very small scale as we are breathing in and breathing out, or as we are, you know, watching what's happening in our bodies. It's totally fundamental to life itself. And the Buddha was not the only teacher who spoke about that. There were other teachers as well, and one is particularly known, Heraclitus, you know, who lived in Greece. He also spoke about impermanence. And he said, he's on record for having said, you know, you can't step in the same river twice. And so what the Buddha brought new into the world was his teaching about not self or emptiness. And I've mentioned it already a few times, but just wanted to say that again, that on the occasion of that special day tomorrow. And, you know, when the mind and heart, when they can stay open, then we can be that very flow of impermanence. And if we are holding on, you know, or wanting to push away, we are creating friction, we are creating tension, we are creating, you know, suffering for ourselves. And that was what the Buddha was picking up, you know, as the most important essence of his teaching. He always said, you know, I teach suffering and the end of suffering. And the end of suffering, you know, is equated with the end of greed, the end of ill will, and the end of delusion, which is also like a synonym for nibbana, for the, you know, summum bonum of the practice. And as long as we are holding on, you know, as long as our mind operates in those patterns, because there's some conditioning still operating, will always again and again, you know, create suffering for ourselves. In particular, you know, like pockets of trauma which are stored in our bodies, you know, they, as long as they are not released through practicing, the holding on and the pinning down and the grasping is going to happen. So it's really important for us to understand, you know, that the traumatic response, which was once exactly the right response when we were small infants and couldn't do anything else but cut ourselves off from that experience, which was too much, which would have overwhelmed us. And now we are, you know, in a different situation, and we can actually use the practice to liquefy those pockets of frozen energy again. And through this liquefaction, you know, we can release it into the flow. And then that means, you know, there is less and less grasping, less and less trying to pin things down. And because of that, there is more ease in our lives. Because, you know, as long as we are grasping in that way, we'll always experience ourselves as separate. For example, you know, if we take our hand and we hold it, you know, we hold it into a river and then we move with the speed of the river, it's complete harmony. But as soon as we are stopping to move the hand and hold it like that, wanting basically to stop the river from flowing, we experience a certain amount of pressure. And that is how suffering is created, yeah, of not being in the flow because of the patterning, you know, which is present in the mind as the result of conditioning. And there's nothing, you know, wrong or bad about that, of course, but to just understand how suffering is created, that is important. And by really, you know, experiencing that pressure, the weight, the pulsing, the burning sensation, the numbness, or whatever, you know, is present, if we are willing to be with that, we can slowly but surely, you know, liquefy it again. And that's, you know, what we are trying to do in the practice when we are going to a direct experience in the body, sensing what we are experiencing rather than thinking about it. That's what we often do. You know, we tend to split off the energy and then, you know, go in the head, go round and round and round and try to make some kind of meaning out of it rather than sensing it. And that's exactly, you know, what we're wanting to train ourselves to come down from the thinking mind into the direct experience, which can happen in the body. And then, you know, we can also, you know, see what patterns are thrown up in the mind, but they are in some sense always a defense against the direct sensing. Because that's something, a skill, you know, which needs to be learned, the skill which needs to be trained. And, you know, these days there's a lot of speaking about somatic experiencing. That's a particular modality, you know, which is designed, you know, to enable people to do that direct experiencing in the body through the help of a therapist and through the guidance. And through this direct experiencing, we are melting, we are liquefying those frozen pockets of trauma, you know, which are stored in the body, and release them into the flow. And through this direct experiencing, we also develop, you know, wisdom and compassion, because knowing how difficult it is for ourselves, we can extrapolate that it is also difficult for others. And in that way, you know, we slowly but surely can step out of that repetition compulsion of trauma, which gets us into trouble, you know, again and again, into different kinds of trouble, you know, either being addicted to substances which help us, you know, to tone down the feelings, or, you know, acting out in ways we later regret. That's just two examples. Or it can also, you know, become that the body becomes sick through certain repressions. So it's a really important part of the practice to understand, you know, how trauma works, and that trauma has a great intelligence which is necessary, you know, for us to be able to cope with overwhelming situations. But then, you know, when we come out of these overwhelming situations and when we have more agency in our lives, we can get back to that work, you know, which couldn't be done before because we weren't resourced enough. And that work of sensing, you know, happens through transcending the object-subject assumption, you know, where we are splitting off and see it out there. And we come back into our body and experience it directly. And through that direct experiencing and through that liquefying, you know, we need to do less and less othering, less and less polarizing, less and less projecting. And, you know, when the times are challenging, when there's lots of uncertainty, you know, there is a tendency for human beings to polarize, you know. That's one of the great fears also we all have, as we are going into the future, knowing there will be more and more environmental challenges, and also in regards, to maybe food supply, water supply, and the daily sustenance, of daily life, which has been a very normal thing for us. We didn't really think much about it. In the future, that might be different. And then if, lots of people are in that situation, what tends to happen? Polarizing tends to set in as a way, to deal with the fear, to deal with the uncertainty. But that's why it's really important to understand how that works, so we can, get ready for times, when we also will be triggered. And today, I'd like to share with us, sharing a meditation on metta. So find a posture you can sustain for about 40 minutes. And allow the breath to take you into the body. Allow the nervous system to guide you, by just noticing the whole body sitting here and breathing in and breathing out. And the gentle force of gravity pulling us towards the land, pulling us towards the planet underneath where we are sitting right now. And allowing your awareness to drop down. And, there's no need to work hard, just, listening to the guidance and allowing your mind and your body to respond. And then you're maybe allowing, an image to arise in the mind of a lovely being, just like little Romeo, who has just joined our group. Yesterday, he came into the life of Barb. Knowing how many, confused little animals are out there in the wildfires, in the zones, in the polar zones, where the ice is melting, in all of those areas, where there's so much change going on, the forests cut down, the oceans filled with plastic, all of the repercussions, which are coming to weigh in more and more onto our environment and impacting so many living beings. And just, allowing that to be a thought, which we just allow to be there. And just, breathing into that. And knowing, the more we are willing to allow the truth, to be met, the quicker we're gonna be changed by that truth. And then our actions will change. And this is the way, how we learn. We learn through making mistakes. I'm sure you can all relate to that when you look back onto your own lives. Often we learn the most from making mistakes. If we have the courage, and the curiosity to pay attention to the repercussions of our mistakes, we will learn from it. That's just the way things are. So imagining, a little being in the midst of this vast evolutionary process, being buffeted on the waves of samsara, as it said in the scriptures, And what a great good fortune that we at least, have a perspective on it, even it's still scary. But there is a framework, for understanding what is happening. And through that understanding, a measure of courage and strength and resilience is becoming available. And, for us, to be able, what we can do to benefit others who don't have that good fortune, to even, have a perspective on what's happening. So the traditional sentence, for the metta meditation is, may all beings be happy. So allowing that thought. Then with the in-breath, tasting the sensations which are happening in the body, maybe in the heart area, there's some kind of a little response to that thought, may all beings be happy. And with the out breath, just allowing the metta gently to spread out through the body without any pressure. And then allowing the heart to open. And the body also to open up. With the in-breath, just tasting how that mind state feels, that state of metta. And with the out-breath, allowing it to spread out throughout the body and even beyond the body if that's what's happening. And noticing, how that works. And as we are bringing up a sentence or an image, setting the conditions in place, the body responds, the mind responds. And then, allowing the metta to slowly radiate out in front of us. And it's a natural, natural unfolding, the immeasurable source of metta, which is in the heart. The mystery of that. Radiating in front of us and then to one side. Behind us. The other side. From above and below. We're sitting in an orb of metta. And that can be, our resource and our protection in a world where there's so much polarization and polarizing going on. So much, making up of stories which point, the finger at somebody else's fault, and not really looking at the whole picture, the underlying narrative of our civilization, which is what really is the culprit, if there is any. It's the story we tell ourselves about what it means, to live as a human being. These stories of extraction and consuming, which need to be updated urgently. That's what is the real culprit for all of this. And it's just another evolutionary threshold we need to cross if we want to, adapt more fully to reality. And that's what we are called to do, to understand that we are not separate from the mothership, which we call planet Earth. We are emerging out of it and living in it as it every moment. So as we are allowing, that to become more and more conscious, we have more and more capacity to attune to it and to resonate with this much master intelligence. And then we know, what is our next step. It just comes through, not by thinking about it, but by simply knowing it. So through letting go, we allowing the new to come through us. Letting go and letting come. First, we need to make some space, and then something can come into that space. A new response rather than a repetition of the past. Just becoming aware of the spaciousness of the mind. As the mind is open and not holding on to anything. So giving room to everything to just be there without becoming it. If a thought arises, just allow it to arise and cease. And just be there, without any agenda, any judgment, just being that knowing. They don't need any, kind of concept of I or me or mine, just awareness and metta. A loving awareness. which understands, that mistakes are there for learning. And they can help us, to step into a greater capacity for listening and paying attention to emergence. That which wants to come through us now on this threshold. The next narrative, which will be with us for a while, and then it needs to make place for the next one. That's how it is. It's a constant change. Just like as one equinox follows on the next, so it is with our worldviews, our narratives. They are impermanent. And the next worldview needs to be about working in dialogue with the living planet. And not trying to hold on to these ideas of mastery. That's, combination of the letting go of many paradigms such as patriarchy, capitalism, consumerism, all of this on top of or extractive approaches. They have run its course. They are no longer suitable for what needs to be done. We need to regenerate our systems. We need to do things very different. And we have what it takes. We just need to do it and stop pretending it's not happening. So emptying out, the mind of these pockets of frozen history, making space for the emergence of the new and ancient at the same time. And for that, we really need to cultivate the Brahmaviharas to give us that agility and flexibility of the heart, which is needed when such challenges are upon us. Like a lubricant for the heart, oiling the wheels basically of something which is a bit rusty, a bit set in its ways, needs to have a total overhaul. Reconsidering so many assumptions. So as we are breathing in, noticing how it feels, if the mind doesn't cling to anything. And as we are breathing out, relaxing into the spaciousness, the emptiness, which is pregnant with possibilities. And in order to experience that, there's no need for a subject or an object, just being that knowing. And as we are practicing in this way, we can see, what emerges into our lives. Without any pressure, but also, with a clear aspiration to be of service for this transition, which needs to happen. There's no doubt we cannot go back into the past. We need to step into the future. And this future needs to be in dialogue with the living planet. And in solidarity with all life, especially with the more than human life, we need to allow that into the circle of concern. The more than human life isn't just here in order to support us. This is a very immature, old narrative which needs to go as quick as possible. And it is going. It's inviting the blessings of the ancestors who have come before us, human ancestors, animal ancestors, plant ancestors, mineral ancestors, countless ancestors, big, large as a mountain, and tiny, tiny, tiny insect, all of those ancestors. Evoking that resilience which has been evolving over billions of years out of material which comes from the stars. It's an awesome amazing process, for lack of a better word. And the more we are capable, of aligning and attuning and resonating with that intelligence, the better for us. Because we cannot control that. That is a complete pipe dream. So, opening the heart, opening the mind, opening the body and the will to support that. Letting go everything which shuts us down, which keeps us stuck. Through sensing and being willing to experience the contraction. Of the fear and the resistance to the vast changes, which are on the horizon for us. The mind can, and the heart can hold all of it because it's limitless. And I have brought a quote by a very ancient Greek philosopher who is called Pyrrho of Elis, and he lived between 360 to 270 before Christ. And I got that poem on a card from Ajahn Sumedho when I visited Amaravati in the winter of 21. And it's a Greek philosopher who says the following, which sounds extremely Buddhist to me. By suspending judgment, by confining oneself to phenomena or objects as they appear, and by asserting nothing, this is hard to read, definite as to how they really are, one can escape the perplexities of life and attain an imperpetuable peace of mind. I read it one more time. By suspending judgment, by confining oneself to phenomena or objects as they appear, and by asserting nothing, definite as to how they really are, one can escape the perplexities of life and attain an imperpetuable peace of mind. Pyrrho of Elis, 360 to 270 BC. So I think that is, where I like to end today with the meditation.